Hey everyone, so today I have a lesson for you on finger picking. And I know finger picking has a bit of mystery with it. It seems like it's tricky sometimes when you hear it. You're like, oh, that sounds really complicated. And in some cases it is, and that's, you just have to work on it until you figure it out. It's the same as learning any other song with difficulty, that you just have to break it down and learn those parts until you've got the hang of it. But in other cases, it sounds a lot more complicated than it actually is. And I will try today to break down a few different types of finger picking that you might come across in songs. And this video isn't intended to be, extensive on finger picking, but hopefully to give you a good rounded handle on what finger picking entails. But there is two things that I think are important to understanding finger picking. And one of those things is understanding musical rhythm and tempo. And I covered this in a video I did all about strumming, and I'll put that here for you, and I'll link it in the description below. But this is actually going to help you to have a good handle on understanding the sort of rhythmic structure of music. And that's going to be important because when you're finger picking, you have to make sure you're in time and those notes are actually being played at the correct point. Whereas in some cases with strumming, you can get away with doing a bit of a different strum and then moving on to the next thing. With finger picking, it's like playing the actual recognizable hook or lead line of a song, right? Like the intro or solo, like people are expecting it to sound a certain way. And if you don't play it that way, then it doesn't sound right. So understanding timing and rhythm is going to be a big portion of actually finger picking. So check that video out if you haven't seen it yet. That will help you on that side. The other big thing to understand when you're getting into this is training your ear to actually hear specific notes. In some cases, there will be a video that'll lay out the actual song itself with detail and you can follow that. That would be great. Or you might have tabs that give you the whole breakdown of the song. Also, that would be great. In some cases, though, those things are incorrect and you need to make an adjustment. But you need to be able to hear where the adjustment needs to be made, and you need to be able to identify where the correct note would then be. Or you may not have any options. There may not be a video on it, there may not be tabs on it or any way to figure that out. And the only way that you're going to be able to play that song, on your own at least, is to figure it out by ear. So I've actually made another video as well, and I'll link that for you here on this video and in the description, that you can check out. That's all about training your ear to hear certain notes, and hopefully that'll help you along from that side as well. But having those two things, musical rhythm and actual ear training in identifying notes, is going to help you a lot of the way in finger picking. So if we take a look at first at just basic finger picking, right? Like the essentials of what you would need to get into this if you've never done it before. The first thing to look at is actually hand dexterity and finger independence. And the reason for that is normally if you're just strumming along, you're holding a pick, or even if you're just strumming with your hand is all moving at the same time. Your fingers aren't independent. They're all working together for one particular motion. So they're not actually used to quite yet in getting that independence and playing separate strings. So what I would recommend to do just as an exercise for building this independence and strength, take a chord, in this case I'll just use a G chord, and then start working on picking with your individual fingers. So what I would do here is take your thumb, you're going to lay them right across the strings, and you can set up for this in a way that makes it easier for you to play. So leave your thumb on your thickest string, your low E string, and then take your other four fingers and actually rest them across the four lightest strings. So you got your index on your D string, your middle fingers on your G string, your ring fingers on your B string, and your lightest finger, your pinky, is on your high E string. And that way you're set up to just pick through and start working on that independence of your fingers. So I would go thumb, thumb on your thickest two strings. So that's like it's almost strumming through those first two strings. And then just play each string in order with your individual fingers. So I'll show you that close up. Thumb, thumb, index, middle, ring, pinky. Okay? And do that until that becomes comfortable for you. And this may be tricky right off the bat, especially as you get to your ring finger and your pinky finger. If you're not used to using them independently for a lot of stuff, that's going to be tricky to get into. And then once you're comfortable with that, because not all finger picking is going to be just in order, your fingers are all going to play in order, you start working on different patterns. And what I mean by that is just changing up which fingers you're playing next. We're leaving the chord as it is, but let's say we want to go now thumb, thumb, same as before, but then we'll go middle finger, index finger, ring finger, pinky finger, okay? So I'll show you that up close. And then there you go, middle finger, index, ring, pinky, okay? And then you could change any pattern you want. Just say, okay, I'm going to do them in this order this time, and start working on actually developing the independence of your fingers. So now we're going to take a look at a few different kinds of finger picking. And if we're starting from a entry level of finger picking, this isn't like specific order of picking through a song. When you listen to a song that you're familiar with that has a finger picking portion or intro, or even the whole thing is finger picked, there is specific chords that are being used, or notes that are being used across the fretboard, and then a specific order or pattern to your finger picking hand. And that, in that style, you have to play things the way that you hear them, or else when people are listening to it, they will, figure that there's something incorrect about the way that it's being played. But there's also finger picking that is just to change the sound of a song, to give you a bit of a difference and a touch of a different flavor to the song, but it's also to help you to change the dynamics of the song. So let's take the example, for instance, I'm just playing and strumming through chords of G, C, D, and E minor. So that's my chord progression. I've been strumming through the song, and I get to a portion where I'm thinking now, okay, I would love to lower the dynamics and actually play just a finger picking portion. Well, in this case, unless this is something that's been recorded and people hear it a certain way, generally people aren't looking for a specific pattern that's going to be played. You get to decide at that point what the pattern is going to be, just to, again, keep the dynamics a bit lower for that portion of the song. So in that case, you could play anything. That's what we learned before, where we've got thumb, thumb on our two thickest strings, and then the rest of our fingers in order. That's the G. And then we can switch to our C, which is almost the same thing. I'm just starting with the C here. And this is a good thing to mention as well. Understanding your root note of chords is going to be really helpful through this portion, because I know that this third fret of my low E string is a G. So when I'm playing a G chord, if I hit that as the first note, that establishes the root of that chord. And that's what people now hear and they go, okay, I know what chord we're on. And then when you switch to a C, if I now play that third fret of the A string, I know that that is a C note. Again, the root of that chord. So I play that first. That now establishes that new chord with its root, and we know that there's been a full change that's happened there. But the rest of those fingers are playing through the same way. So I'm just playing a C. And even though I went from playing 6 notes then to playing only 5, as long as we understand music timing and rhythm and give that period of time before the next chord change the same amount as we were when we were strumming, then it doesn't matter if there's 6 notes, 5 notes, however we want to play through that actual finger picking portion, as long as it fits within that same amount of time before the next chord change, it'll work, right? So if we're in 4/4 time, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 6 notes, 2, 3 to the C, that's 5 notes, 2, 3, 4, right? That's 2 notes together. It doesn't matter because we're just staying in time here. And that's why it's important to understand that rhythm, that musical timing, because depending on what position we're in, we may not have as many options to pick through certain notes. But as long as we're staying in time before our next chord change, it's fine. Okay, so that's the G. 2, 3, 4 to C. And again, I'm just picking through in order. Then we move to that D, right? Well, our D, if you know where the root is there, it's the 2nd fret of our G string. So now if we move our thumb down one more, so we're now on that D string itself. So we had our G up here on the 3rd fret, and then C on the 3rd fret. D is actually our open D string. Okay, so now we're starting there with our thumb. And we've just moved our fingers up one string each, so now we're only going to play with these 3 fingers here. We've dropped our pinky out. And we're playing them in order again, right? And then our last chord is our E minor, which our open E string, our low E string, that is our root, our E for that chord. And we can play it through the same way that we played through our G chord, because we're back on that low E string again. Right? So I hope that makes sense. I'm just playing through an order the same way that we did our exercise earlier. And I'll do that closer for you so you can see all those chord changes and how I'm picking through them. Here we go. G to the C to our D to our E minor. Right? 2, 3, 4, C. 2, 3, 4. I just walked that back down. Right? So on that D there, all I did was I played. And then back, just followed those fingers back. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. That's my ring finger on the high E string. And then I went back to the middle finger on the B string. And then my index finger on the G string. And then into my E minor chord. So this is where having that practice in building that independence of fingers and starting to understand what these different patterns on finger picking they sound like, this is what's going to help you when you're actually deciding for yourself how you want things to sound. And to be able to get that then you get all these options that you can use because you start to figure out what things sound like and what patterns you like. It allows you to change the dynamics of a song, but it also allows you to make things sound a little interesting, right? Play 2 strings at the same time. It's all good because you get to decide and you're starting to be comfortable with the different fingers and playing through those different finger picking orders, the patterns. So that gives you that option. You can also do multiple fingers at the same time. So like we were talking about already, you can do 2 fingers however you want, wherever your fingers line up. You can also do more than that. So in this case, you can have, let's say we go back to our G chord. I'm going to do my thumb on the G. That's the low E string, right? G is 3rd fret. And then I want to have the other 4 fingers where they were before, okay? So string 4, 3, 2, and 1. And I'm just going to go all together. You hear this a lot in music. And that's all I'm doing is just back and forth between my thumb and then the rest of my hand, all picking those strings at the same time. That's the C, so all I did is move my thumb to the A string. That's the D, so I just moved my 3 fingers up 1 string each like we did before. E minor. Okay, so that's a different type of finger picking that you can use. It's more rhythmic, let's say, in the way that it is played, but still finger picking, and something you hear common. It's not individually picked strings like before. You're doing multiples at the same time, and it's allowing you to, again, add a bit more texture or a bit of a difference to your song. And again, when you're actually listening to songs and you're trying to figure them out by ear, you may hear that and you go, okay, there's multiple strings being played at the same time. Now I have to actually figure out what that sound is so that I can replicate it myself. So we're going to look at a few different examples today of a couple different styles in popular songs that you may have heard before, and just sort of understand what is happening from a finger-picking perspective that'll hopefully help you as you're trying to figure out other songs in the future, or even just write stuff for yourself with some finger-picking. So let's take a look at a few examples now. Okay, so we're going to take a look at a song called Alleluia, and you've probably heard this song before, but it's actually just played by finger picking through chords that you probably already know. So the progression, if you were to just strum this along, and this is how I would actually figure out a song. If I'm listening to it, I would strum along with the chords first to figure out what chords are happening, and then you start to break down what the pattern of the finger picking is. So in this case, if you're listening to the song, it goes... So that's your C into an A minor, right? I heard there was a secret chord, right? Then it goes to an F. That's a C, A minor, right? And then it goes F to G. That's the A minor again. That's an F, and then that's G. Back to the A minor. To the C. And then you get to that chorus portion, which is F. To the C. To the F. C, G, and back to the C. So that's the first thing I would do. I would sit down with the song, I would try and figure out the chord progression. Once I did that, then I can go, okay, I know the progression, I know the order it's supposed to be played, I know the tempo of the song, and when the chord changes happen, all of that's figured out. Now I have to figure out what the actual pattern is of how these chords are being played from a finger picking perspective. So we'll start with our C chord, and you have to think, okay, what does it sound like? Well, it goes dun 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 dun, right? So we got to figure out what notes are being played. So we'll start with our C as our root. Okay, we've already got our first note figured out. That's good. And in a lot of cases with finger picking, your root of a chord will be the first note that gets played because, again, you're establishing that chord. Okay, I'm just playing them in order, right? So this is laid down the same way we were playing a C before, where I've got my thumb on the A string. That's my index finger on my D string. Again, correct note. Correct again. That's playing my middle finger on the G string. That's playing my ring finger on the B string. And that's my pinky on the high E string. So we don't need to go to that high E string because that's not one of the notes we hear. So that's all I'm doing. I'm playing through those four strings in the middle, starting with my A string, D, G, B. And I'm just walking back and forth because that's the order there, right? So up close. Okay, so I'm just going thumb, index, middle, ring, middle, index, thumb, playing it again. But then there's a chord change that happens, right? So we go to the A minor. Well, what's the actual order here? A is our open A string. Ah, it's the exact same thing from a finger picking side. Alright, so our first two chords. Okay, and this doesn't matter either. If you want to change this up, like for me personally, I'm more comfortable playing the thumb on the first two notes. Because again, then you're cutting out your two less independent fingers, your ring finger and your pinky finger. And then I'm just using my index and my middle finger here. And then when I'm walking back, I just use my index for both the G string and the D string. So. Right? Okay, and then we have to work in our next chord, which is our F chord. Ah, so it changes there. But the actual pattern of this hand, as far as what fingers we use, isn't changing. It's just moving everything up one lighter string. So we've got our F chord on this side, but we're starting here because we want to get that F root note, which is the 3rd fret of our D string. But this hand plays through the progression the same way, it's just starting on that D string now, okay? So now we've got those first three chords. That's the F, right? That's the whole first portion of the song. We've got it figured out. We didn't have to change the actual order of our fingers from our finger picking side. We just moved it up that one string when we got to the F chord. And then we have to now continue on with the song. So we've got that. Sorry. So then you have that. Goes like this, and this portion of the song actually tells you what chords you're playing. The fourth is your F. Fourth, so we're just playing through the first three strings there because it cuts off before we actually finish that whole picking progression. Then it goes to the fifth, which in this case is a G. And the way that I play that one is I'm trying to keep that sound, or they keep the sound of that chord movement almost the same except for the root. So your F here, it starts on the D string, it goes D, G, and B as far as strings played. But when it switches to the G chord, it does the low E string because that's where our G is, right? But these two fingers are in the same spot as our F chord, so they're still playing the G string and the B string. Okay, so right? Or you can do it that way. You can, if you want to add a bit more flavor to it, and play two strings together. But that allows you to actually figure out that whole first portion of the song. And then it goes back to the A minor, which you play through the same way as we have before. The nice thing about this song is anytime you switch to these chords, you're playing through the actual finger picking progression the same way as the last time that you saw that chord. So it gives you that option of being able to play this song without having to learn a whole bunch of different patterns on your actual right hand, your picking hand. So that's one style of finger picking. That is basically just finger picking through actual chords, like full chords, in a repetitive order or pattern from your finger picking hand that is familiar to your ear, so you can hear, okay, now we have that chord change, and because the pattern is the same from the finger picking side, we know where those chord changes are going to happen. We've got that structure of the song, and we can recognize what the song is. Right? So that's our first example. That's one style of finger picking that you're going to hear. We're going to move on to our next one now, and I'm going to show you that also. So let's take a look at that one. So we're going to take a look at our second example, which is now a bit more that bouncy sort of finger picking style like we looked at earlier with that back and forth between your thumb and the rest of your fingers. And the song that we're using as an example is called Hey There Delilah. We'll look at the intro. And basically in this case, you're still using chords, but it's not like you're trying to play a lot of the strings at the same time. So you're just focusing on a few of the actual like essential notes that build the chord, and you're playing those in a pattern back and forth. So you start off with a D5 chord, which is your root, your D, and then your fifth degree, which in this case is an A. So you do that by actually playing the your D is your open D string, and then you have an A, which is the second fret of your G string, and then you have an additional D, which is the third fret of your B string. And you're going back and forth here. So you've got your thumb on your D string to get that root, and then you're playing your index and your middle finger together on the next two strings. Okay, and that's the sound of it. Just back and forth. And then your next chord is an F sharp minor chord, so you want to hit that F sharp on your D string. So you're not actually moving your finger picking hand at all from this position. It's playing the same thing through the whole song. It's actually just the chord changes that make it sound different. So that's hitting your F sharp, which again is your root of an F sharp minor chord. And then you're taking the other two fingers where they were, except you're sliding your middle finger down to the 2nd fret now. Okay, so I'll get close for you to see that. So we'll start here with just these 2 fingers. Alright, that's the D string, and then the 2 other fingers are playing your G string and your B string. And then you want to get to the next chord, which again is your F sharp now on the D string, and then you're sliding this finger down from your 3rd fret to your 2nd fret on the B string. Okay, so together. Hey there, Delilah, what's it like in New York City, right? So that's that bounce back and forth in a finger picking style still, but it's more of just an echo or a exchange between your thumb and your other fingers to get that rhythm, that bouncy sort of rhythm in the chord. So that's your second example. That's another way that you see finger picking come up. Again, it's more specific to the song, so you hear the difference in those chords, and that way you can actually start to play some songs like that, or when you hear it, you'll know what that is. So let's look at our third example of some finger picking in popular music right now. So for this example, we are actually going to start looking at breaking down from typical chord structures, and this is where there's a real highlight in my opinion on finger picking, because you can play individual notes and things can sound, you know, maybe a little dissonant or like not as perfect as chords normally sound, but you can get away with it with finger picking because you're not trying to get that whole chord sound. And the song we're looking at is called Wake Me Up When September Ends by Green Day, and this one here, when you're actually playing it through, you're just playing individual notes to get the sound that you're looking for. So in this case, you're starting off with your 5th fret of your D string, and then you're playing your G string, so you'll notice these 2 notes are the same. Okay, so they're both G's at this point. And then you're playing your 3rd fret of your B string. Okay, this finger is just here because it's still attached to my hand, but it's not playing anything. And you're just going 1, 2, 3. So it's just thumb, index, middle finger playing through those strings from the D string to the B string. Right? So summer has come and passed. Right? So that all we're doing there is we're moving from the D string 5th fret to D string 4th fret. You can either just slide your finger or add your middle finger in. I prefer putting the middle finger in because it's less of an awkward position to hold. So again, you can hear now that that's got a bit of a dissonant sound, which is why you get that vibration, that odd vibration in the guitar. Right? Because the notes don't feel resolved. There feels like there's a bit of tension there. But finger picking allows you to do that because you're just playing individual notes. You're not worried about strumming. If I was to strum this, that sounds okay so far. It almost sounds like there's too much chaos happening trying to strum through all the strings. So you'd have to mute a lot of strings, and in which case this finger pick actually allows you to just focus on those specific strings that you want. So that's the first 2 changes, and then we move over to this. So we've actually swapped from having our index finger on that 3rd fret of the B string. We're now going to put our ring finger on that same fret to keep that note going, and then we are pushing our index finger on the 2nd fret of the D string. So this whole time we're leaving that G open, we're just playing on the 2 strings around it as far as... And really it's only the note on the D string that's actually changing and working its way down, we're still maintaining that 3rd fret, but there is a change of our finger on that fret halfway through. Okay, so then the last one would just be open on the D string, so it's open D, open G, and then the 3rd fret of the B string. So that whole first portion goes. And then we switch here, and then take our index off. Okay, so that's that first portion there. And then it actually switches, so we're playing our C here, which is the 3rd fret of our A string, and we're moving our thumb to that A string as well to start, because again, it's our root. That's where we're starting to establish the chord. Okay, that's our 2nd fret of the D string, and I'm playing that through just thumb, thumb. And then I play these 2 strings together, which again is our open G string, and our 3rd fret of the B string. So that's our next one. And then we're just sliding. So again, we're able to accomplish something that's got a nice dissonant sound, but sounds controlled because we're doing it as a finger picking style. So we're leaving that C where it is, but we're sliding down our index finger from the 2nd fret to the 1st fret of our D string. And both thumb, thumb, A string, D string, and then G string and B string together again before we repeat that cycle. So. Go back to the top. Okay, so all that together. Okay, so that's where finger picking, I think, can really offer something that you might not be able to accomplish as well through chording, right? So. Sorry. Doesn't sound terrible, like it still works, but I think it sounds better as a fingerpick style. Because you're just really giving each note the chance to shine and establish that sound you want. Right? So that's where I think fingerpicking really works to kind of help build something that you may not be able to accomplish through other means of playing the guitar. Okay, so that's pretty much fingerpicking as far as the examples I've given and walking through some other basic things for you. That's in my opinion the foundation of fingerpicking, and I hope that has actually helped you out a lot today. I know that there's just so much that can be covered. There's a lot of cool stuff out there that can be done with fingerpicking, and some of it is quite tricky, and it'll take some time to get there. And as always, I'm always trying to encourage you and tell you, like, start here, build that foundation, and hopefully that will allow you to continue to develop that skill and grow not only as a fingerpicking player, but just as a guitarist in general. All these little things, they come together to continue to build your ability and strengthen your knowledge in guitar playing. So I really do hope that this has been helpful for you today, and that it has helped you to kind of not just lay that basic foundation, but also to help you to identify certain sounds in songs. So as you're listening to songs that you want to learn, you can say, hey, you know what, I know what that fingerpicking pattern or style is because of this video. If you have any questions, as always, please just let me know in the comment section. I will do my best to try and answer them for you. And hopefully that this has just helped to propel you on your journey, continue in your guitar playing, and make you a better fingerpicking guitarist. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and have fun playing guitar. As always, love you guys.